You're worthless. You can't handle the chores or take care of the kids. What's worse, you still expect me to pay alimony." John barked as he finally showed up at the hospital 2 weeks after my car accident. He spoke these outrageous words without a hint of concern for me as I lay on the hospital bed. I had naively thought he had come to visit me out of care, but this encounter only confirmed he was a disappointing husband after all. I let out a long sigh. Honestly, I had been contemplating divorce myself. I didn't expect John to bring it up today, but I suppose I should be thankful it saved us the trouble. "Fine," I replied. John was taken aback by my lack of resistance. Little did he know, I was laughing inside. I saw right through his ploy. "My name is Catherine. I'm a 35-year-old housewife living with my husband John and our 7-year-old daughter Emma. John and I met at a blind group date and got married when I was 28. He was easy to talk to, and his persistent charm won me over. John was the most attractive one at the table, and when he told me he liked me, I felt proud. He was devoted to our relationship, surprising me with desserts and bouquets at fancy restaurants for my birthdays, taking me on trips for our anniversaries, and writing heartfelt letters at just the right moments. I accepted his marriage proposal without hesitation, believing our life together would always be exciting. But marriage changed him. "Hey Catherine, my dinner isn't ready yet. I worked all day and you can't even have dinner prepared for me when I get home. I can't believe how lazy you are." He insisted he was the master of the house, and I was his caretaker. Initially, I thought he was joking, but it soon became clear he wasn't. He treated me like a servant. Since getting married, I had to quit my job, and we lived on John's income. I feared he might punish me financially if I disobeyed him. Despite his domineering behavior, John's income wasn't high. I had been earning more when I was working. John, a high school graduate, bounced from job to job, his fickle nature preventing him from holding a position for more than a year or two. He seemed to resent his background and took out his frustration on me at home. "I'm sorry I'd have delayed with some errands," I said once. "Don't make excuses. Just hurry up and make dinner," he replied, sitting on the couch with a cold beer in hand. It was a scene I had grown accustomed to, but it always made me sigh. My marriage was miserable, but I managed to cope. After a year of marriage, Emma was born, adding to my daily struggles. John rarely helped with our child, although he spoiled her with candy and toys. I wanted to raise Emma properly, so I scolded her when needed, which only made her more attached to John. "Emma, you like Daddy, don't you?" "Yeah, Daddy's cool. I love Daddy." John beamed with a smug expression. It was frustrating, but I couldn't deny that Emma loving her father was a good thing. Still, despite spoiling Emma, John never attended her kindergarten events. "John, there's a parent-child race at Emma's sports festival. Could you participate?" "Huh? Why me? You're free that day. You should do it." "I'm busy with work every day." "You do it. But it's a chance to bond as parents. The sports festival is on a holiday, so you won't have to work." "Shut up. We're already bonded. Maybe you should work on your bond with Emma. She thinks you're a wicked witch, you know. Lol." John left for work, laughing at me. He was a super dad who never showed up for school events. I worried that John's self-indulgent, strict behavior might influence Emma. He continued to leave all household chores and child-rearing to me, remaining lazy at home. Now Emma is 6 and ready for elementary school, but John is still switching jobs. He recently quit his factory job and moved to a position in the food and beverage industry. "I'll be working on weekends at my new job," John announced. "Really? It seems like we'll be like ships passing in the night then." "It can't be helped. It's work." "Yes, I know," I said, actually feeling relieved. I was tired of John's weekend orders to do housework. I hated his nagging. With John gone on holidays, Emma would be sad, but at least I wouldn't have to deal with his constant criticism. "I understand," I replied. I couldn't complain to John, who was the breadwinner for our family. Reluctantly, I went to tell Emma about John's new work schedule. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but Daddy won't be able to go out with us on his days off." I expected Emma to be sad, so I braced myself for her reaction, but to my surprise, she looked unconcerned. "It's okay. Are you okay with it? He won't be here on all weekends, you know that, right?" "Yeah," she replied. "Daddy has been smelling strange lately." "A strange smell?" I echoed, puzzled. Emma nodded and went back to her room. I was bewildered. What on earth was she talking about? Recently, I'd been so overwhelmed by housework and child-rearing that I hadn't noticed anything different about John. Our marriage wasn't the same as it used to be, and I made an effort to avoid John to prevent provoking him. It might be the smell from the factory, I reasoned to myself. It made the most sense. Factories often use special solvents, so it would be natural for John to have a lingering odor. If that was the case, the smell would eventually fade. Children are incredibly honest, and that's what makes them adorable. As John had said, he started leaving early in the morning on his days off. Strangely, he also left the house every day on weekdays. If he was working on weekends, he should have a day off during the week, but he left without saying anything to me, so I couldn't tell if he was actually going to work. I wondered what he could be doing, leaving so early even on his days off. Curious, I asked him, "You seem to be going out every day off. What are you doing?" John blinked in confusion for a moment, then scratched his head in an annoyed manner. "I'm working. I'm going to work voluntarily." "Really? But you should take care of yourself, or your body won't hold up." "Shut up. Don't complain about my job," he snapped. I didn't understand why John got so angry about this when he constantly complained about my housework and child rearing. I didn't believe what John said. There was no way he would voluntarily go to work on his days off. I knew this because I had been watching him closely for many years. If he was that passionate about work, he would have stayed at his previous company longer. I started paying attention to the strange smell Emma had mentioned. Indeed, John came home from work with a sweet, striking fragrance. The smell wasn't from the factory. Why hadn't I noticed this before? I lamented my naivety and vowed never to make such a mistake again. From that point on, I decided to carefully observe John on weekdays when he claimed he was going to work. He seemed to wake up an hour earlier than usual, groom himself meticulously, and appeared to be in a good mood. These days varied from week to week, sometimes being a Monday, sometimes a Thursday, but it was clear that John was happy on those days. When John left the house, I went into his room to see if there was anything that could serve as a clue. I felt like a police officer conducting a search. Since I always cleaned John's room, I was familiar with it, and I didn't feel guilty. If John had left any incriminating evidence, it would likely be somewhere not easily spotted. I searched carefully under the desk and bed. Finally, in a candy tin in the closet, I found a large number of letters. "What is this?" I muttered to myself. All the letters were from the same person named Mia, properly sent through the mail. The postmark dates revealed the oldest was from 2 months ago, and the most recent was sent just yesterday. As I read through them, I found phrases like, "I regretted when we broke up, but now I really love you. I want to go back to the time when I was with you, and I love you," reminiscent of a teenage girl in the throes of youth. At first, I thought it was John's ex-girlfriend sending letters unilaterally, but then I found a concerning sentence. "I'm glad you like me again. I'm looking forward to our next date." This truly joyful sentence jumped out at me. The date on it was from last week. It seemed John was meeting this my girl regularly. He was definitely guilty. I took photos of the letters' contents with my smartphone, considering confiscating the letters but realizing that moving them might arouse John's suspicion. Although I had physical evidence, it felt insufficient as proof. After pondering for a while, I decided to hire a private investigator to look into John's personal life. 3 weeks later, the investigator reported the results. I was surprised to receive them so quickly. The investigator brought photos of John walking arm in arm with Mia and exchanging passionate embraces in the park at night. There was even a recording of them saying, "I love you" to each other. I calmly accepted the facts. With solid evidence in hand, I went straight to the municipal office and came back with a divorce form. Now that I knew John was cheating, there was no reason to cling to him anymore. I swore to thrust the divorce papers in John's face the next time something definitive happened. I returned home and heaved a deep sigh. I was acting decisively this time, but honestly, I was devastated. I was angry at myself for having married someone like John. I thought about resting a bit before preparing dinner when my cell phone rang. "Hello?" "Yes, Catherine. Do you have time to talk?" "Yes. What's going on?" I was genuinely surprised by the sudden call from my father. He usually didn't call me. "Actually, your mother and I talked yesterday, and we're thinking about transferring our assets to you soon." "Huh. What happened?" My father ran a company that sold imported goods from overseas to Japanese corporations. In short, I was the daughter of the president of a big company, but I had never told John about this. I thought it would sound like bragging. I felt like I was bragging, especially since John was flitting from one job to another. What could my father mean by transferring assets to me? "We're getting old and thinking about retiring. We considered keeping the company going but didn't want to burden you, our only daughter, with it, so we decided to step away." "I see," I replied, feeling a mix of guilt and gratitude. My parents had always respected my decision not to take over the company and were now considering my future. I was overwhelmed by their kindness. "So we're planning to transfer our assets to you. Our total wealth is $14 million, but we're fine with keeping just $1 million. We've decided to give you the remaining $13 million. $13 million. I was stunned by the figure. It was an amount I could never dream of earning in my entire life. "Yes, there will be inheritance tax, but there should still be quite a bit left. You won't have to worry about living expenses for the rest of your life." Dad, Thank you. I expressed my utmost gratitude to my father and mother and hung up the phone. $13 million would be coming my way soon. With that money, I wouldn't have any worries even if I divorced John. No offense to John, but he probably didn't have the ability to earn that much money. I felt relieved and was in a daze for a while. I looked at the clock. It was 5 p.m. Realizing I needed to prepare dinner, I checked the refrigerator but found it empty. I got ready to go shopping at the supermarket. After hearing about the assets from my father, my heart felt lighter, but there was also a sense of urgency, knowing John might come home soon. I was walking quickly when the last crosswalk to the supermarket turned green, and I hurried across. "Watch out!" someone yelled, but my body was already soaring through the air. I slammed into the ground, a strong impact piercing my head. Without understanding what had happened, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on a hospital bed. The first thing that caught my eye. When I opened my eyes, the first faces I saw were my parents and Emma. "Catherine, thank goodness," Mom said, tears of relief in her eyes. Emma was sobbing next to me. I gently stroked her head. "You were hit by a car and fractured both legs," Mom continued. "They say it will take 3 months for a full recovery." 3 months? I felt dizzy at the thought of such a long period of immobility. From that day on, I was confined to a wheelchair. Although the nurses took care of me, I felt frustration and irritation at not being able to use my legs. During my hospital stay, my parents and friends came to visit me. My parents were now taking care of Emma since John was always at work. I thought it would be better for Emma. I was happy that everyone came to visit, but John never showed up. I doubted his sensitivity, thinking, aren't we husband and wife after all? I couldn't help but imagine that he must be enjoying his daily life with his ex-girlfriend. However, 2 weeks after the start of my hospitalization, John finally showed up. "Hey, feeling good?" John asked ironically, even though he must have known I wasn't well. "Yes," I replied lightly, shocked by his insensitivity. "It's a mess here without you at home," he complained. John, who always had something negative to say about my housework, seemed to lack human empathy. I sighed, hoping he would at least show a little concern for my well-being. "What can I do?" "I was in a car accident," I retorted. John looked at me with contempt and said, "What are you talking about? You're useless if you can't do housework or child care. That's the worst, and you'd better pay alimony." He blurted out such outrageous things to his hospitalized wife. Although I initially thought better of John, assuming he finally came to visit me out of concern, he was still a disappointing husband. I sighed heavily again. Honestly, I had been thinking about wanting a divorce myself. I hadn't expected John to bring it up today, but I might as well be thankful that it saved me the trouble of arguing. "Fine," I said, nodding. John's eyes widened in surprise. "Sure," I continued. "I know your true intentions." I wanted to say that and couldn't stop laughing inside. "Here's a divorce notice," I said, pulling out a filled-in divorce notice from a bag my mother had brought me and thrusting it in front of John's nose. "You already had this." John looked momentarily confused, his eyes wide, but he snatched the divorce notice from me and filled in his name and address on the spot. "I feel refreshed knowing I won't have to see your face ever again," he said. I wanted to tell him the feeling was mutual, but I silently watched John leave. He would probably remarry Mia after filing the divorce notice. I didn't know what kind of woman Maya was, but it felt somewhat pitiful to think she was going to marry someone as domineering and unpleasant as John. I felt like I'd done something terrible to Emma, but it was a decision I had made long ago. I swore in my heart that I would raise Emma well. For a month after John showed up, my life was at peace. The time without being nagged by my husband was like heaven to me. I was discharged from the hospital and started physical rehab. I decided to stay at my parents' house until my leg recovered. They were furious at John when they heard about the divorce, but they stopped bothering me about it when I told them I wanted to forget about him. Emma, despite not having a father, didn't seem lonely and was attending elementary school cheerfully. In the end, Emma saw through him too. Emma had noticed John's domineering attitude and perhaps no longer thought of him as her father, given how often he was away, even on his days off. Divorcing John was the right decision. I was convinced of it. But one weekday afternoon, I received a call on my mobile phone. I ignored it when I saw John's name on the screen. However, the phone kept ringing incessantly. Thinking it wouldn't stop if I kept ignoring it, I finally answered the call. "Hey, Catherine. When are you coming back?" Hearing John's voice made my skin crawl. I involuntarily asked back, "What do you mean, coming back? You remarried Mia, didn't you?" John was surprised and exclaimed, "How do you know about that?" "Did you think I didn't know you cheated? That's why I demanded alimony." "Yes, that's right, but alimony and child support. There's no way I can pay that. Why do I have to pay alimony in the first place?" You never did the housework. You should be the one paying alimony. I was dumbfounded by John's argument. I had demanded alimony and child support through a lawyer, but it hadn't been paid yet. I knew John didn't have a lump sum of money, but he should borrow and pay. Yet here he was, saying something incomprehensible like I should be the one to pay alimony. I noticed your affair and gathered evidence. Did you see it from the lawyer? It seemed that John had already seen the evidence gathered by the detective agency. That would make things easier, but calling me specifically was beyond common sense. I wanted to divorce you even before I found out about the affair. After all, you never helped with housework or child-rearing and just complained all the time. I'm not your housekeeper, you know, but it's good you remarried, right? Now you have someone to take care of you again. But that's the thing. Maya can't do housework. I didn't know before marriage. She said, leave everything to me, but once we got married, her cooking is terrible and she doesn't clean. I would have been better off with you. Marry me again. After all, you don't have any money, right? Emma likes me too, doesn't she? I couldn't suppress my anger at John for choosing the word better. What are you talking about? You divorced me and remarried your affair partner, right? That's not my responsibility. Besides, sorry to say, Emma doesn't like you, and I have money. Don't lie to me. There's no way you have money. You were a housewife. You can't live without me. I had no intentions of telling John about the fortune I inherited from my parents, but when confronted this intensely, I had no choice but to reveal it. My parents are CEOs. I recently inherited their assets. It's around $30 million in total, so I can live without working for the rest of my life. I could almost visualize John gaping on the other end of the phone as he heard about this massive fortune from my mouth. You're lying, right? There's no way you have such a huge amount of money. It's true. If you want, I can have my parents confirm it for you. John finally seemed to believe my words and fell silent. Then he suddenly yelled, if it's true, why didn't you tell me? Well, I wanted to tell you what I knew about your affair and was thinking the worst of you. So I thought it didn't matter at that point. I hadn't yet inherited the assets, so there was no issue of property distribution. Damn, John bit his lip in frustration. He probably never imagined that I had such assets. He must be regretting ever divorcing me, but I didn't want to endure his terrible behavior anymore. Can I hang up now? Please pay the alimony properly, reflect on your actions, and never call me again. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked John's number. No more calls would come. Mom, who were you talking to? Emma came into the room, asking curiously. A friend of mine. But Emma, do you want to go to the amusement park this weekend? Yes, Emma smiled happily. I realized once again that as long as Emma was smiling, that was enough for me. A few days later, I heard that John had broken up with his new wife, Mia. The cause was a dispute over me and not doing housework, and it seems that Maya dumped John. John, who had been divorced twice in a short period, would probably have a hard time getting married again. At any rate, it would be best if there were no more victims, so I hope John remains single for a while. Due to his divorce from Mia, he lost his motivation for work and quit his job at the restaurant. He will probably find another job, but I think it will take a while for him to get back on track. I do feel sorry for him as his life has fallen apart, but it's all his own fault. I blocked his calls so he couldn't beg me for money, and I made sure not to go to places where I had been with John. In my life, John literally disappeared. After a while, John paid the alimony, which put him in debt. I don't know how he'll make a living, but I hope he learns his lesson. I'm still living leisurely at my parents' house. My parents told me that it's okay for us to stay as long as we like. After my fracture healed completely, I started working part-time at a local flower shop. Although I can live without working, it suits me better to work outside rather than staying at home all the time. I worked diligently on weekdays and went out to play with Emma and my parents on holidays. I felt more joy in life than before. I want to continue living happily with the people I love. I savored the happiness of this moment while looking at Emma's smile.